The first $10,000 you save will do more for your life than the next 100,000 ever will. That's not motivational filler. It's a structural truth about how money actually works in Canada, and almost nobody talks about it. Most people think wealth is a slow, linear climb. You save a bit, then a bit more, then a bit more, and eventually you're rich. But the data says something different. There's a specific tipping point, usually somewhere around the $10,000 mark, where your entire financial life quietly reorganizes itself. Your stress drops, your decisions change, your debt stops compounding, and your money starts compounding instead. And if you're watching this and you don't have $10,000 saved yet, you are not alone. You are statistically the majority of this country. According to a 2025 survey commissioned by H&R Block Canada, 46% of Canadians say they're unable to save for long-term goals like retirement or a home because their entire paycheck goes to immediate needs. 48% rely on a credit card rather than savings to cover larger purchases. A separate Angus Reid poll found that most Canadians under 55 could not handle an unexpected expense of more than $1,000 without going into debt. So when we talk about saving $10,000, we're not talking about getting rich. We're talking about crossing a line that more than half the country hasn't crossed. And once you cross it, your financial life stops looking like theirs. Let's start with where the middle actually is. As of the fourth quarter of 2025, the average household savings rate in Canada was 4.4% of disposable income. That's down from 5.2% just one quarter earlier. It means a typical Canadian household is saving a little over 4 cents for every dollar they take home after tax. If you earn the median full-time wage in Canada, which sits roughly in the mid-$60,000 range before tax, your take-home pay is somewhere around $50,000 a year. Saving 4.4% of that works out to about $2,200 annually. At that pace, $10,000 takes roughly 4.5 years to build. That is the actual Canadian baseline, not the Instagram version, not the Toronto Finance Bro version, the real one. And it tells you why $10,000 feels so far away to so many people, even people earning solid salaries. Now let's walk up the ladder. If you have more than $1,000 in liquid savings, you are already ahead of roughly 1 in 4 Canadians, because Statistics Canada's quality of life data shows 26% of Canadians would be unable to cover an unexpected $500 expense. Reality check on that tier. These are not all low-income households. A surprising share of people earning $60,000, $70,000, even $80,000 a year sit here because their fixed costs, rent, car payment, groceries, childcare, leave almost nothing at the end of the month. Being broke in Canada in 2026 is not the same thing as being poor. It's a cash flow problem dressed up as a lifestyle. If you have $5,000 saved, you've moved into roughly the top half of Canadian households by liquid savings, based on emergency fund data collected across multiple FCAC and private surveys. Reality check. $5,000 doesn't feel like a lot. It's 2 months of rent in Vancouver, or one furnace replacement, or a transmission repair, but it's the first point at which you stop having to put emergencies on a credit card. That single shift from borrowing to withdrawing changes the math of your entire financial life. If you have $10,000 saved, you have more liquid savings than roughly half of Canadian households. This is the number we built this video around, and we'll come back to why it matters so much in a minute. Reality check. $10,000 is not wealthy by any definition. It won't buy a used car in most of the country anymore. It won't cover 6 months of expenses in any major city. But crossing this line does something the next $90,000 won't do, and the data on this is surprisingly consistent. If you have $25,000 in liquid savings, you are in roughly the top third of Canadian households. At this level, you've typically covered 3 to 6 months of core expenses, which is the emergency fund target most financial planners recommend. Reality check. People at this level usually don't feel rich. They feel cautious. They've been burned before, or they've seen a parent get laid off, or they went through 2020 and decided never again. The money isn't a flex, it's armor. If you have $50,000 or more in liquid savings, you are in roughly the top 15% of Canadian households for cash equivalent assets based on distributional wealth data from Statistics Canada. Reality check. At this level, people usually stop thinking about savings and start thinking about investing. The question changes from how do I not run out to how do I make this grow? That's a completely different mental game. Here's where everything flips. You might assume that the biggest financial change in your life happens when you hit 6 figures of savings, or when you buy your first property, or when you max out your TFSA. That's what the internet tells you. But the actual research says the biggest psychological and behavioral change happens at a much lower number, and it happens because of something economists call the financial resilience threshold. Research from Canada's Financial Wellness Lab at Western University, released in October 2025, found that workers with even modest emergency savings were dramatically less likely to fall behind on debt payments or turn to high-interest credit cards and early RSP withdrawals. The effect was disproportionate. A small amount of savings prevented a much larger amount of future financial damage. The FP Canada 2025 Financial Stress Index reinforces this. Money is still the top source of stress for Canadians, beating work, relationships, and personal health. And the single biggest action Canadians themselves identify as reducing that stress is having an emergency fund. So here's the twist. The value of your first $10,000 isn't the $10,000. It's what that $10,000 stops from happening. It stops the 22% credit card interest. It stops the $2,000 payday loan. It stops the early RRSP withdrawal that costs you 30% in tax and decades of compound growth. It stops the panic sale of investments during a downturn. The first $10,000 doesn't make you wealthy. It makes the entire system of everyday financial bleeding stop. And that's why the next $100,000 is actually easier to save than the first 10. By the time you have 10,000, you've plugged the leaks. Every dollar you earn after that is a dollar you actually get to keep. So why doesn't it feel this way while you're doing it? Part of the answer is that saving $10,000 in Canada right now is genuinely harder than it was a decade ago. In the H&R Block survey, 78% of Canadians said they expected to have less money to put into savings in 2025 than in previous years, citing the high day-to-day cost of living. 1 in 3 said they may as well enjoy spending their money because buying a home feels out of reach anyway. That last number matters. When a big goal feels impossible, people stop saving for smaller ones too. The psychology of what's the point is one of the most expensive emotions in personal finance. There's also the comparison problem. If you live in Toronto, Vancouver, or Calgary, $10,000 feels like nothing because everyone around you is talking about down payments, pre-construction condos, and investment properties. If you live in Saskatoon, Halifax, or Moncton, $10,000 is a meaningful cushion that covers real emergencies, but social media flattens the whole country into one conversation and makes every Canadian feel behind. And then there's the hedonic treadmill. Every time your income goes up, your baseline lifestyle goes up with it. That's why people earning $120,000 a year can still feel broke. The savings never happen because the spending adjusts first. The $10,000 milestone works specifically because it's the point where you've built enough margin that one bad month doesn't undo 3 good ones. Here's the concrete reframe. Stop thinking about saving in terms of retirement or a house or a vacation or any of the big abstract goals the financial industry loves to talk about. Those goals are real, but they're too far away to drive daily behavior. Instead, aim for $10,000 in a high-interest savings account or a TFSA. Just $10,000. Nothing fancy. The 2026 TFSA contribution limit is $7,000, and cumulative lifetime room for anyone who was 18 or older in 2009 is up to $109,000. You have the room? The question is the deposit. If you save $200 a week, you hit $10,000 in about 12 months. If you save $100 a week, you hit it in under 2 years. If you save $50 a week, you hit it in just under 4 years. Every one of those timelines is faster than the national average savings rate would get you there because the national average is being dragged down by people saving nothing at all. Automate it, move the money the same day your paycheck lands before you see it in your checking account. The single biggest predictor of whether Canadians hit savings goals is not income, it's automation. And once you hit 10,000, do not touch it unless the situation is genuinely an emergency. The point of this money is not to spend it. The point is to have it. The first $10,000 is the hardest money you will ever save, and it is also the most valuable. Everything after it is easier, faster, and more productive. If you want more videos that break down the real numbers behind building wealth as an everyday Canadian, without the hype and without the nonsense, subscribe. Next week, we're looking at exactly where that 10,000 should sit once you have it, and which Canadian accounts actually outperform the others in 2026.